two, one. I think we are live. Hold on. Hello and welcome back. I hope you guys having a wonderful Friday. So Friday, I like to have Fridays dedicated to have some guests throughout the coffee community. But today, I'm happy to have our good friend of our channel, Steve from
Hey everybody.
Acaia, and we are talking about their new products as well. We're going to talk about
Mhm.
new product, and also, are you going to brew some coffee this morning, Steve?
I'm gonna brew some coffee. We're going to talk about Expo. Is what we're going to
Yeah,
talk
we're going to talk about
about.
the expo as well.
Yeah. Um, I am finally recovered from Expo. I think.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. But I think I'm there. It's only been 2 weeks. Yeah. So this was my first Expo in 5 years. The last one that I went to
Mm.
was 2019. And it's the first time that I went to one for Acaia. So this was a really big one for me.
Oh wow! So this is your
But
first for Acaia.
First for Acaia, yeah. I've been at Acaia 4 years. The
Yep.
last time I went was with Prima. Um, but yeah, it took a lot out of me. It really knocked me down, and I caught like a bad cold, so I've just been sick afterward too. um, but it was good. It was really good. It was good to see a lot of people. I met like all of my Acaia team in person. There's a
Yep.
few people that I've met before, but the majority, like all the Portland team. Yeah, I would say like I think I knew 5 or 6 people and we
Hmm.
had 14. So the majority I was like, I've never seen you in person before. It's good to
Yep.
actually like see your face. Um, but yeah, it was really good. Akai has an amazing team. I want to brag on him a little bit. We had
Good.
like this is honestly one of the best ones that I've ever worked. Everything went so smoothly. Everybody was such a hard worker. We all knew what we were doing, what was expected of us, and like we just got stuff done. And it's a really good team to work with. Um, but yeah, so it was fun. It was exhausting, but it was fun. It was really good to be back and like see people I haven't seen in
Yep.
years. I got to see you, meet you in person.
Yep.
A few other from the Hoon crew and a whole bunch of other people that I only know from the internet. So
That's
that's
right.
always fun.
The thing about the internet versus the meeting in person, I mean, is okay. It is different, but the same. Okay, because I've been talking
Yeah,
to Steve for last God over the
a
years.
couple of years, 3 years, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We talked to, I talked to Steve on the Discord as well as, regular live streaming as well. But in person, even the first time, but I feel like I already know him. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
thought
Yeah.
that's really, really cool as well. And, but again, if you don't know what Akaya does, I know some of you, can you tell us about your company briefly?
Yeah. So actually, this was a cool year for us too because this is our 10th anniversary. We're
Hmm.
we're 10 years old this year. We started out 10 years ago with a Kickstarter for the original Pearl scale, the brewing
Okay.
scale. Looks just like this, even though
Yep.
this is the new version. So in 10 years, we released multiple different types of coffee brewing
Yep.
scales. We have espresso scales as well. And then along the way, we started branching out more into other things. Like we
Hmm.
have other brewing accessories, like a brewing stand. Hoon's got the lunar scale there.
Yep.
Um, we got like brewing stand, we got dosing cups, other little tools and things. And we released this guy, the Orbit
That's right. Yep.
coffee
Orbit.
grinder. That's almost 2 years ago. And then actually just last month in March,
Hmm.
we did like a re-release basically. So when we launched, we called it the Eclipse Edition. It was sort of like the starter edition, just to see like, okay, we released this thing. It's our first grinder. We've never made a grinder before. Grinders are complex. We're expecting that, stuff is going to go wrong. Not catastrophically wrong, but like, it's going to go wrong and we're going to have to fix it. So the first units that went out, we sent a lot of like swag along with it. There was like an extended warranty and just basically like, look, we understand you're kind of taking a chance with us. We're confident in it and we're confident in our ability to like service and support it. But stuff might happen. So we want to make sure that you feel, well taken care of. So that was like the Eclipse launch. And then finally we were like, okay, we're through it. Like we're done. We're very satisfied with where we're at. We're going to do the full sort of like version, well, not version, but like the standard edition launch. So that's out now. We have 3 colors, this gray, black and white. Um, and it's in a really good place. I'm really proud of where that grinder has kind of like come to. And yeah, if you're in the market for a premium like 64 millimeter grinder, keep this on your radar.
Okay, and
Um,
then by the way,
yeah.
you have a brand new product from SCA. I know you guys are showcasing it.
Yeah. So we have our newest product this year is a really important step as well. I wish I could like show you what it is. Who's got it on screen? What it is called the Astra. I'll show you. It's just like this is just like a TV remote, but it's kind of like this size. Okay. What it is like it's like an accessory computer. That's kind of the simplest way to put it. So we've been making these scales for 10 years. They're just scales, right? Like they're not super smart devices. We make good quality scales for sure, but the hardware and stuff inside is like it's kind of old school technology. It's not really pushing any advancements or anything like that. So it's older technology. There's only so much that you can do with it. A scale only has so much computational power, so much memory on it that, at some point we're like, okay, well, as we improve these things and as we want to add more functions to the products that we make, at some point we have to upgrade the hardware. At some point we have to make a jump. And that's basically what the Astra is that jump into a next generation of hardware. But the device that we've made is specifically designed to add functionality back to all of our old devices. So if you have that 10-year-old Kickstarter Pearl,
Okay.
you can have access to brand new functions and features that are not possible to put on that scale because they require too much power. And it's on the Astra instead. So it does a bunch of cool things. It's not ready. It's not available right now. So like there's the demos that we were doing at the show are like, here's like what's in progress. And in the next 6 months, as we finalize the software and stuff, we'll see what the actual end product is going to be like. But it has a more powerful processor built in. It's an ARM or ARM processor, which is like, I mean, those things have been used in all kinds of devices. But you can sort of think of it as like a smartphone style of processor, more memory, lots of storage on board. So one of the most exciting things for me is shot logging. You can store like thousands of espressos on this device. If you're a cafe, you can like have it connect to your Lunar and start just like logging shots. And then we have a comparison tool. So you're like, okay, you're dialing in the morning, first thing. You make that perfect espresso. It's all dialed in. You say, okay, I want that to be my reference shot. It'll have a graph in the background of the reference shot. And then every shot you pull after that will display over it. So it'll be an overlay with a little number in the top right. It's a comparison of how accurate you are. So if you're like 90% accurate, you're good. You serve that shot. If you're 70% accurate, you're probably gonna be like, no, I gotta fix something. I gotta make a change, stop this shot, redial in, and then serve that better shot to a customer. Or even if you're just pulling shots at home, you can see how consistent you are day to day. You dial in the coffee that you just got and you get that, again, that perfect shot. Use that as your reference. And then throughout the week, as you're pulling shots, you can see how they change, taste and see if 70% is still acceptable or actually, that flowed way too fast. Let's make a grind adjustment and get back on track. So that's just kind of one possibility. You can take all that data off of it too. So like you just have a USB-C cable, hook it up to your computer. It's just, like CSV or Excel format files, nothing proprietary or anything. You take all that data off of it, put it on your computer. And again, like if you're a cafe, you can look at a week's worth of shots or pour over brews or whatever. Take a look at that data and see how consistent everything is. See if like, okay, those lunch rushes are really crushing us. We're losing consistency. So we should add another person to staff and help take some of the weight off. It's just data at that point. Like whatever you want to do with that data, you now have access to it. The demo that we were doing at the show is a cool one. It's probably most useful for semi-auto machines, but it's called the Espresso Forecaster. So it connects to a Lunar scale, and as you're pulling shots, it's getting data off the Lunar. It's showing you your current weight in real time, the current time of the shot, and then it's using the flow rate data to give you a prediction of if you stop the shot right now, here's how many grams will end up in your cup.
Oh, wow.
Which is really useful if you're doing like a catering event, you're doing like a wedding, or you're doing a farmer's market or something like that, where you have maybe a Linea Mini, which is what we were using at the show. Linea Mini has a paddle to just turn on and off, and then it also has spouts of on the portafilter. So like your spouts have a little bit of like a travel time sort of thing. So if you stop a shot, there's going to be, I don't know, 3 grams, let's say, of flow at the end of that shot between when you stop and what ends up in the cup final. So you have to sort of use your intuition as a barista. You have to, read that flow rate and say, oh, I should stop right now. And you can do that, and you'll probably overshoot a little bit. But this is nice because it can sit right on top of your machine, look you in the face. And that's also nice too, because you don't have to stare down at the scale. You can look up over the machine and see your customer and engage with your customer. So you have a screen that's sort of like right here in the bottom of your field of view, and it changes color as well. So like it starts out the sort of like, I don't know, purpley color or something like that, and then changes to like an orange. So you can, if you only see that the colors change, you can just kind of blindly stop the shot right then, and hopefully end up at your target.
By
So
the
like
way,
that. Oh
if
yeah,
you're
go ahead.
just joining us, I'm talking to Steve from Acaia. We are talking about their latest product coming out in about next 6 months. It's
Yeah,
called
yeah. Our target is like end of Q3,
it's gonna
basically.
be it's called Astra. Okay, and then
Astra.
Steve
Yeah.
is we've been talking for the last few minutes as well. But let me ask you, so this one is more for coffee shop or people or coffee hobbyist. Can we
I mean,
use this?
I see it. It's both, really, but I see it as like, if you're going to spend the money on this, a lot of people at home, I think, they're more willing to deal with a little bit of
Mhm.
fat. You know what I mean? Like, if I have to touch a couple of buttons, uh, or do a mental calculation or whatever, like that's that's low pressure at home. Like,
Yep.
there's definitely people who want all of the convenience and all of the automatic stuff at home. I get that. But like for me, most days I'm just in it to make a coffee. And there's a lot of people who are like that. So I think, the majority of people who buy the Astra are probably looking at it from that standpoint of like, how does it improve my business? How does it help my workflow? How does it help me get extra value out of the scales I already have without having to replace them? But that selling point, not having to replace your old scale, that goes for anybody who has one. If you like your Acaia scale and it's old and you don't want it to, you want to extend its usefulness, you want to get rid of it, and we don't want you to get rid of it. The Astra is something where it's like, yeah, you get access to these new features. So like brew logging, that's useful for anybody. The
Mhm.
fact that it holds thousands is probably more useful to the cafe than the home user, but you just don't have to worry about storage. Um, I would say the one thing that really strikes me about cafe versus home is like, at home you can just use your phone. A lot of people are going to use their phone. They're okay using
Yep.
apps on a phone at home, and fine for you. I don't personally really love that, but like I get it. Like it's convenience. You already have this thing in your pocket. It's a very capable computer, and you already have it. You don't need to buy an extra device. That's fine. In a cafe though, using a phone behind bar as you're a barista, like working, for one, whose phone is going to get used for this? If it's the cafe's, like brain hub of connecting your scales, whose phone is it going to be? A barista's? Is it going to be the shop phone? And in that case, why buy a $500 phone when you can buy a maybe $150 thing that's designed to work with these scales? But like at the same time, like, yeah, who wants to use their phone in really for all the tasks on bar? As a customer, when I go in and I see baristas on their phones, like it's not a good look.
Yep.
Everybody's got downtime. I'm not going to yell at somebody for being on Instagram when the shop is empty, but if they're like making drinks and playing on their phone, it's not a good look. And also, phones are kind of yucky.
Yep.
Like, it's not the most sanitary thing
Yep.
either. So yeah, like you have this dedicated device. It can sit on top of your machine. Actually, it's capable of wireless charging. So we like on at Expo, we parked it on a wireless charger, and like it just charges all day at that point. Um, so yeah, like I don't know. I see a lot of versatility and a lot of application for commercial. And most of those conversations that I had at Expo, because of the cost of Expo and more or less who it's designed for, most of that is for the industry, right? It's for working professionals. There's obviously home folks like yourself who attend this show, but the majority of the people who are there have some kind of business related to coffee. So, the pitch in my head, a lot of the stuff that I've talked about with the Astra so far is like, yeah, how does this fit into your business? How does this help you as a cafe owner or maybe a shop manager or even an educator or a trainer? Like, how does this fit into your life? And I think the Astra has a lot of stuff that works for that. And then at home, you know, I think the display is really useful because it's a TFT display, so it's like it's just a more robust display. All of these, a 7 segment. Sorry, this Matt. A 7 segment display. It can only show so much information.
Okay.
Even the dot matrix display that we have on the Pearl S, it can show a little bit more, but still it's dots. Now we have pixels, full color pixels. We can put anything on the screen that we want.
So Steve,
Um,
so me, I have a Bianca here, so I
mhm.
can put right on the top then.
Yeah, you could put it on the top. You could put it. So it's got a couple of things. So it's magnetic on the back. If
Okay.
it has a magnetic surface, you could stick it to it. Obviously, you want to be able to see it. But like I said, at the show, we had it on a wireless charging stand,
Yep.
and that is like articulated, so you could kind of like change the angle and turn it however you wanted. You can buy those. Those are generic chargers. Um, so yeah, you could get something like that, hook it up, and again, you don't have to worry about charging it then. Um, so the idea, I mean, like, again, like that screen adds a lot of utility. The apps that we've currently developed on it, or the modes that we've currently developed on it, are kind of designed to replicate some of the things we've already made. The espresso forecaster is new. That's not something that exists. We do have like flow modeling on some of our apps, as well as like current flow rate display on the Pearl and the Lunar scales. But the forecaster is a different application of that. And then from there, it's like, what else can we think of, right? Like, we have an app that's called Brew. It's a tablet app. Not a lot of people have heard of it because it's a little bit of a niche application. The
Uh-huh.
way that it works is you have kind of like this. You have a Pearl on the bottom, a Lunar, and then you'd have like a stand, a brew stand.
Huh.
Um, and a lot of people aren't really brewing with two scales like that, but it's a really cool app because it gives you the total brew weight of everything. It gives you just the beverage weight that's in your server. Um, and then
Ah.
it also gives you everything in the cone. All three of those things simultaneously you can look at. So as you're brewing pour overs, this is amazing for a shop, either for training or just for consistency. But you can see how much water you pour into the cone and then how much actually flows out in real time. So you see like a line
Yep.
graph. How consistent are your pours and how consistent is your draining? And instead of having that on a big tablet, 6 or 8 inch display, you can have it just on this little, 2 inch TFT display, which is it's a smaller screen, but it's perfectly good for that information. All you really need to see is the peaks, the peak up and then the dip down, the water in and the water out, or the coffee out. And like you can see how consistent that is because and what that does for you is like in real time you can see, oh, is my brew bed choking? Am I stalling? Can I stop this brew right now, reset and fix it? Or can I, maybe just pour a little bit differently and try to recover? That's useful for anybody. Like I said, it's really great for consistency on a bar, but anybody can use that to learn how to brew better pour overs. You do
And
need two scales,
yep.
but still, like that's super useful, I think.
And Steve,
Um,
if I like people like me, because I don't have Pearl, can I use that as a two lunar?
yeah, as long as the thing's not like falling over.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's designed for a Pearl and a Lunar, but I'm sure like for us that's just two scales. You can just
Yeah,
connect two
exactly.
scales.
Yeah.
And right now the Astra is designed for two scales to connect simultaneously, but it can connect up to six. We just haven't like what do you connect 6 scales for? We don't know. So it has the hardware capability of doing it, but I think it's finding out what the application is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you mentioned about that this is for business, but a lot of home hobbyists out there. They like this kind of stuff. You know.
I think so too. I think it's going to be really fun for the data nerds who just like to log everything.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
but also, yeah, like I said, like if you've got that old Pearl has I think 6 brew modes on it, and a lot of folks at home they don't want to get rid of the perfectly working scale just to get a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though it's like a lot of us do that with cell phones, like if you don't have to, you don't have to. So if
Yep.
you can just get a little screen that all of a sudden adds like uh you know much more functionality and it can expand what that Pearl does, I think that's got a lot of appeal for a lot of people.
I think so
Um,
too. Because
I'm
yeah, because
gonna grab my water. I want to make some coffee with you.
okay, yeah,
I'll
please
be
do.
right
And
back.
if you're joining us, we are talking to Steve from Acaia. He's sharing with us about their new product called Astra. Okay, Astra from Acaia. Keep track of all your brewing, the brewing stats. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, if you haven't seen it, let me show you guys one more time here. If you go to Acaia, the Instagram page, you're gonna see looks something like this. Okay, that looks sizable, like small remote control. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit smaller than this, but
Mm-hmm.
like this is just like a TV remote. Um, it's about that same size. It's pretty compact. Um, yeah, kind of an all-in-one. It has physical buttons. People are going to be really excited about that, I think.
Yeah, you know
Four,
what I have to
four physical
say,
buttons.
the lack of button on Acaia scales are, I mean, this is really it's fantastic. By the way, it's water resistant, it's great,
Yeah,
but I do like the tactile feedback
yeah.
as well.
It's hard to do both. It's hard to make a device. So like the Lunar is cool because you can just sort of, dump a cup of water
Yep.
on it, hot water even, and it's fine. You know, you might have your buttons are capacitive. It's
Yep.
fine to have water spilled over it. It won't kill the scale. It will just kind of change the function for a moment. So if you have physical buttons, it's really hard to seal them up properly. And also, I don't know. Well, I mean, there's just different considerations for different designs. I think it's like uh, I don't know. I'm also sort of like I would prefer hardware buttons sometimes. The Lunar for me is the one that responds the best to me. I
Mhm.
actually find sometimes the Pearl. I don't know if I have like calloused fingers or something. I don't know what it is. They just don't always like to respond by touch. But it's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off for the design that you're doing. This is the coffee I'm brewing today. This is from Rose.
Okay.
I think they are in Switzerland, maybe. I don't know for sure, but this was given to me by the Swiss Brewers Cup champion, Suki. It was amazing. Honestly, like Expo is amazing because you run into all these people who are like astonishingly good at what they do. Um, so the first day I arrived, I met up with a couple of my teammates, and they're like, "Hey, we're being invited to coffee. Some champions are just going to make some coffee." And we're like,
Wow.
"Oh yeah, okay, of course." And it turned out being a practice run through of Suki's Brewers Cup routine. So I got to like sit there and watch this routine and taste coffee. And Matt Winton was there. He's Suki's coach,
Mhm.
and like mind blowing. You have these people who are amazing at making coffee. They're just astonishingly good palates, and I felt completely unqualified to be there trying to tell you. Like I have no business telling Suki what their coffee is tasting like. So I was like, you rely on them. They're your coach. I'll just say, hey, I think your routine was like really good. I think you had really good eye contact, and I felt very included as this practice judge. So I think you're doing a good job there.
So, Steve,
Uh,
let me ask you. So, that person used that same coffee you're about to drink, or they just
No, this is a different. This is a decaf. I really appreciate this because I've been drinking a lot less caffeine lately.
okay,
Just caffeine has kind of been making me feel not
okay,
great.
mhm,
So when I find a really tasty decaf, I'm elated. So this is Los Nogales from Huila. It's a
okay.
fermented Typica decaf, roasted by Rose. Suki just came by the booth and dropped off some coffee for us, and I was like, yes, I'm going to steal this decaf because I need it.
What's the
um,
tasting note on that one?
It's not. There's nothing on the bag, but I would
Oh
say
wow.
as a fermented Typica decaf, I would say what I'm getting most is like this kind of like peach pie kind of thing. It's
Okay.
got the graham crackery, but also that like really rich fruity. There's a bit of a fermented overtone to it that reminds me of like a Gamay wine,
Yeah.
which is maybe a little bit of a weird reference for people, but it's got a little winey aroma to it. But a Gamay is usually kind of like a juicy, fruity, like cherry or plum kind of expression, depending on what's done to it. But Gamay grapes are one of my favorites, and it's delightful to have that in a coffee. Um,
Hold on a second. You just mentioned about the graham crackers, right? Tastes like graham crackers. How can you explain to regular folks like us? I mean, what they taste like in coffee? Is that
yeah,
literally taste like graham cracker taste, or is the
it's
essence
always
of
an
graham cracker?
interpretation. There's
Okay.
very little literal it tastes like. So graham cracker for me in a coffee is like a borderline almost it's borderline good and bad. So
Okay.
graham cracker can go a direction where it's like it tastes too much like cereal. It tastes
Okay.
like cooked oats or cooked wheat,
Yeah.
like bulgur or something. Um, and that to me is like a little too savory. It's not as enjoyable to drink. Usually, it seems like that coffee's under roasted or underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Um, but cereal can go in a positive direction as well, especially if there's sweetness. So graham cracker combines a little bit of that cereal flavor with cooked sugar, caramelized
Mhm.
sugar, as well as just kind of a generally sweet profile, or even a little honey sometimes, a little cinnamon, a little spice. So it's kind of a confluence of different flavors that reminds you of a graham cracker. So it's not
Uh,
literal graham cracker in the cup, but that's just sort of what it triggers for me is like that
sure.
whatever I'm tasting, whatever chemicals I'm tasting, just remind me of graham cracker.
So again, if you are joining us, we are talking to Steve from Acaia, talking about their new product, and also he's about to brew a decaf from Rose.
Right.
And then,
I'm using my Time More 64.
oh, you got the 064. Nice. Which brewer are you using? Are you using your regular origami?
Did you get any fun coffee from Expo?
I did. Let me brew some coffee here. I got a lot of samples from Hydrangea. Okay.
Yeah,
The
Bill
beer
was
stuff.
there. Bill gave me like a handful. It was awesome.
Yeah, beer drop off in a whole bunch of coffee like this, smaller bag. With a
I gave a lot of those away to my coworkers because I was like, I'll take a couple of these, but I have a
yeah.
lot. So take your coffee home. Have fun with it.
And which brewer are you using right now?
I'm going with my favorite. I'm using my origami with
Yeah.
Toledo 185 filters, and then doing my mellow drip.
Okay.
This
By
is
the
the
way, I
recipe.
mean,
I've talked to you about this 100 times before. It's my go-to pour over recipe.
yeah.
And then for water, I'm using 40/30
Hmm.
calcium and bicarbonate
Yep.
water,
Yep.
which is Oslo water. I've used that before with Tim Wendelbo coffees. Um, and then I really like it anytime that I want to emphasize like light sparkly acidity, which is what I like with this coffee. It's decaf is tough, and it's a fermented decaf, so it's kind of doubly tough because the appearance of the beans looks kind of dark, but the actual like roasting profile isn't as dark as it appears. So what I'm finding is like, okay, there's that cereal note. I really want to push that toward graham cracker. I want it to have sweetness, and I want to have some acidity to balance out that sweetness. So using this water is helping me do that. I can get
Got
a
it.
nice high extraction and still get a good balance of that, that like peach flavor that I'm looking for, a little bit of that wininess in that graham cracker.
So I have a copy from I don't know where, but I do have decaf here as well. Let's brew some decaf. Man, people put tiny fonts. By the way, it's hard to say, but so this is decaf. I'm gonna brew some coffee. About you like to use what 15-gram dose, Steve, or what is your
I
go-to?
do I do 16. My total is I brew 16 grams and that's a 1 to 16, so my total is
Yeah.
256. And then I do a 50-gram bloom and then roughly two 100-gram pours with the mellow drip.
Yeah, lately I've been using like very, like 12-gram dose. something very small.
Oh
Like
yeah.
yeah, smaller dose.
I mean, with decaf, what's the reason not to go high, right? You can have a nice big batch and none of the caffeine.
Sure, but but in decaf still have some caffeine.
A little. It
Yeah, a little
depends,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's around 90% decaffeinated. So you have almost no caffeine to speak of. Oh, there is a comment here. While I was talking, I was reading it over. So they say, unfortunately, the lunar dot drip icon interface is difficult to work with and remember. I mean, yeah, like I said, there's only so much that we can show on the display at a time. So the method that we've had to display the different modes is there's a square, there's a triangle, and there's a drip, all on the thing, and they basically mean different things. It's like drip is auto start with flow, and then there's an auto tear. I think it's the square portion. Auto tear with flow, and then auto start. So there's a few different modes that combine the different functions. Um, so yeah, I mean there's like a little bit of interpretation in how those modes work. We tried to keep it simple, but it's like, there's only so many things we can put on that display, and also it can't just be in English because we sell scales everywhere. So it has to be multilingual or non-lingual, basically, and suitable for everybody to understand in a global market, which is difficult. So yeah, I understand that it's like maybe it's non-intuitive, but there's anything that you do, any design that you do is going to have some people who are sort of left out because you can't suit everybody equally all at once, which is unfortunate. Um, the hope with something like the Astra is that we could have like localized information. So if there is, let's say, verbal or lingual information on screen, if there's something that is presented in a language, we could put it in Chinese, we could put it in Arabic, we could put it in English, we could put it in whatever. We try to localize it to mostly main markets, I think, because we may not have the resources to do it for everybody. But yeah, like I think still the inclination is to try to make it generic, as we have, like rely on symbols rather than letters. But yeah, again, it's a different display. You can put a lot more information on it, and you can store more in the like system memory too. So
Oh, by the way, have you got
valid
to
critique.
Steve?
Yes.
Have you got to watch the Brewers Cup Championship?
No. Oh my gosh. Every year, every single year, I like watching competition and I like to engage. So it was really amazing meeting Suki and the whole team. All these people who are like accomplished brewers, champions, and things, accomplished competitors, know exactly what they're doing and know how to sort of work that system. Um, I love being around those people. I don't fancy myself the competing sort, but like it's really amazing to be around folks like that who like really do have that drive for competition. But that's about as close as I get because I had to work. I had to be in my booth, and we had a very busy booth this year. It was a really busy show. It was actually, I think, the most attended in maybe ever, but also just quite a long time. It was over 17,000 attendees when they usually expect around 15. So 15,000. So yeah, it was a very busy show. Our booth was in a good spot in that we got a lot of foot traffic, and that also means that you're kept busy at all times. So my voice was hoarse. Hoon heard it. My voice was really hoarse. I was wearing a mask the whole weekend as well, and like I had to project a lot so people could understand me and I wasn't being muffled, and that only made it worse.
All right,
Yeah.
Steve. So let's give it a try. Our coffee's here.
This has a very interesting, like
Yeah.
chocolatey aroma to it. Cheers,
Cheers, bro.
man.
Man, I can smell the very fermentation as well. So this is definitely an anaerobic process decaf.
Hmm. I think my grind is a little too fine. My brew time was okay, but I think my grind is a little too fine. I could probably take this a little coarser and agitate a little bit more, because what I'm getting is a little dryness, a little astringency on the immediate finish of the sip.
I can definitely taste a grapefruit acidity.
Yeah, this is still pretty stone fruit. I would say not really peach as much as it is maybe like a red plum. So a different flavor profile. And I think also that dryness is reminding me of like plum skin,
Sure.
has a
Yep.
little bit of astringency to it. But it's really nice. It's got a fresh, like juicy acidity to it. I wish it tasted a little bit more like cooked fruit, because that's sort of the sweetness that I was hoping for. But again, I think that's just a brew tweak. It's not the coffee. It's just the brew could be tweaked a little bit differently. It is fairly sweet, but it's going a little bit more acidic and dry. So sweetness would help to balance both of those things. No graham cracker, not really.
And then what about I know some of our viewers some are new to the coffee, and how can what's the processing for decaf, right?
Mm. There's a few different types. I would say that a lot of specialty decaf is either a water process or what's called ethyl acetate or
Yep.
sugarcane
Hmm.
process decaf. Um, my understanding of decaf is pretty much that it all works very similarly. So water process, for example, you take raw green coffee. I think usually you steam it, so it kind of like opens up the coffee pores more or less, like it expands the coffee beans. And then you steep it or even like boil it in water. Then you take all that water, it's all this like green coffee extract, and then you filter it somehow to remove just the caffeine. And I think sometimes that's done using like they're called like chemical sieves,
Uh-huh.
but I don't really know specifically what that filtering process is like. But there's a filtering process that removes the caffeine. So what you're left with is this highly concentrated green coffee extract that has most of the caffeine removed. And then you take a second batch of green coffee, steam it, and then you steep it in this extract. And what happens then is only the caffeine comes out, because that's the thing that has room to dissolve into that solution. Everything else is saturated. There's too much of all this flavor compound in the water for more to come out of the green coffee. Then you take the second batch of coffee, it has most of its caffeine removed, you dry it, and then you can roast it. Ethyl acetates, I mean, all the chemical solvent processes, and not to say that water is not a chemical solvent, it is, but all the non-water chemical solvents, ethyl acetate is it's derived, it's like fermented from sugarcane. That's why people call it sugarcane process. Ethyl acetate is just a solvent that it's preferential for removing caffeine. So I'm not really sure how the process is different. It may not have two batches like the water process does, where you have some like waste green coffee. And by the way, I don't know if you can reuse the green coffee like solution. You might be able to reuse it. You might be able to just say, okay, here's this solution and it's full of green coffee stuff, and then we pull some caffeine out, and then we filter out the caffeine again, and then we use that for another batch. So I don't know if it's always like a 2-to-1. It might just be one time to make a big batch of solution, and then you use that solution for a bunch of batches of green coffee, and then eventually you have to recharge it or something. So yeah, don't get that impression. I don't know for sure how that works. The ethyl acetate, there's also like supercritical CO2, where you have like liquid CO2 that somehow is used as a solvent. There's all these different ways. Basically, you steep the coffee in some kind of solvent to remove caffeine. Sometimes you remove other stuff as well as caffeine and have to try to put the other stuff back into the coffee or preserve it somehow. but they're all a little bit different. I would say specialty coffee has been particularly interested in the ethyl acetate process for a few years because it is a little bit better at preserving the like delicate acidity and sweetness in particular of kind of higher end fancy expensive coffees. And I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to do like a side by side taste test of the same coffee processed with different decaf or decaffeination methods. So I don't know from experience, but this is kind of what I gather from folks who do work in the industry is that ethyl acetate is preferred for the flavor in the end. All decaf processes affect the final flavor of the
Yep.
coffee. And they also change a little bit like the roasting mechanics of the coffee too. A lot of roasters will tell you that roasting decaf is difficult, not just because the appearance is darker, but also because it doesn't roast the same way. The progression of roasting changes because the green coffee has already been subjected to heat or something in some manner in order to have the caffeine removed. The other thing, though, is that you have naturally low caffeine or naturally decaf coffees, such as Eugenioides or Lorena. Both of those have low or no caffeine. And they're interesting, too, because they taste much sweeter on their own. Caffeine is like a bitter compound. So if you have like Eugenioides, it almost tastes like Splenda sweet.
That's what I
Like,
heard, right? So
yeah.
a lot of barista champions or a lot of competitors use over the years. Is
Yeah, and both of those varieties. Actually, Eugenioides is a species, I think. I think Lorena is a variety. Anyway, like those are they're pretty rare. They're hard to find. So competitors they really like to find unique coffees um, because it presents a good story, but also because you can have not an edge specifically, but you can have an opportunity to present a coffee that is very unique and could be memorable for judges. The way that judging works isn't really supposed to be like who's got the best coffee on stage. It's really more about like presentation and accuracy
yeah,
of
accuracy,
those
right?
flavors. So like you could have like a very boring and basic
Yeah.
like you know blended Brazil something or other. You just have to be very specific about those flavors um, and what the judges should expect.
Mhm.
And also, it should still have some kind of balance and appealing flavor, but like, it doesn't have to be the most expensive coffee in the world to win competition. Um, I think somebody actually did pretty well with the decaf this year. I'd have to like look back and see, but the coffee selection it's a little bit of a show sometimes in that like people want to put their best things on display. Competition can actually help you be like, oh, that coffee won competition and let's buy it.
Hold
Everybody
that
wants
thought.
it now.
This decaf is actually I got from Jordan. Okay, so this is the same copy competed at the Brewers Cup.
Ah,
Same decaf.
yeah,
Okay, I just remember
that's
this
really cool.
decaf coffee. It does not taste like decaf. All right.
I know that's probably one of my favorite things is like like I said, decaf changes the flavor of coffee and then it also makes roasting a little bit I don't want to say more difficult, but it's different, right? Like there's a difference to how you might approach those coffees. So when I explore decafs, I'm looking for something that preserves that experience of a good, a really nice higher end washed coffee
Yep.
usually. And it's hard to find that. It's hard to find decafs that don't have these defects to me. Like I don't prefer that flavor of like I said, cooked grains, oats, and
Yep.
whatever. I get that a lot in decaf. If it has that, but it's still in balance with the sweetness and the fruit like this is, and it tastes like oatmeal with a spoonful of
Sure.
jam, that could be okay. I can appreciate that. But when I really want that acidity, I want sweetness, I want
Hmm.
clarity, and decaf can just be hard to find that has those qualities. So yeah, if you have a competition grade decaf. It was probably selected because it doesn't taste, like a decaf, quote unquote. It's because it tastes more like a conventional coffee.
I mean, again, the fact is, Steve, over the years, I've been looking for nice decaf. It's hard to find, first of all. And then the most decent decaf is most times is more like anaerobic process coffee. I know
Yeah.
Diego Bermudez is fantastic coffee as well. Obviously, this decaf, yeah, I cannot see the name of it, but I mean, this is also processed too.
Yeah.
I mean, decaf is already processed, but it seems like
Right. Well, yeah, but you can decaffeinate if you're using one of these processes. You can decaffeinate any green coffee. So yeah,
exactly, yeah.
now that we're getting a lot of coffees that they've got some kind of fermentation, like that is very trendy right now. There's a lot of coffees that are they're like doing co-ferments. They're doing
Mm-hmm.
novel fermentation techniques. They're introducing new strains of microbes that might be used in like beer and wine, or even like sake and whatever. Like people are experimenting a lot with these fermentation techniques because they can modulate the flavor of green coffee. Whereas like previously, what you grow is what you get. Like there's still some fermentation involved in a lot of coffee processing, but like this is pushing fermentation as a flavor modulator. And because there's a lot of these green coffees available, you can submit those for decaffeination. You can send them off to have them dunked in ethyl acetate to
Yep.
remove the caffeine. And yeah, you're going to get access to interesting decafs that don't have
Sure.
the typical flavor profiles you would expect, and might be more interesting and enjoyable.
Yep. Again, but if you're joining us, we are talking to Steve from Acaia, and we are talking about pretty much various coffee topic as well. So if you have missed it, first half of our conversation, make sure to go back and go watch. We are talking about some interesting product from Acaia. It's called Astra, but
Yeah, you can, I
and
wish I
then
could show it.
but at the same time, here's the thing about I know a lot of people are watching. You got a few people watching right now, but comes to specialty decaf versus regular decaf at the grocery store, guys, it's not the same. Okay, we are talking day and night difference in the tasting profile. So, so
That is
if
pretty
you're
true.
yeah, if you're new to the specialty coffee, I mean, do you have like couple tips for them? Hey, try this coffee, try this roaster. Do you have like top three roasters you can think of? They produce, they roast pretty decent decaf coffee.
I I gotta say, there's too many to name.
Okay.
What I would say is like, we already talked about the difference of the style of decaffeination.
Yep.
If you're new to this, one thing that you can do is look for a coffee that says that it's ethyl acetate,
Okay.
EA, or sugarcane processed decaf.
Okay.
So that those are all three of those are the same thing. Um, what that will give you access to is this, again, it's this processing technique, the decaffeination technique, that a
Hmm.
lot of people working in specialty coffee see as superior in terms of
Hmm.
flavor. It gives them the results they're looking for in terms of the presentation of acidity, of sweetness, and the preservation, I suppose, of the green coffee flavor. Um, so kind of follow their lead in that way. Look for this. Oops.
Okay. Go
Um, yeah, I couldn't give you a specific roaster because there's so many of them, and a lot of them even have access to the same green coffee. So, like, I'm in New York, you're in Arizona,
Yep.
I might have a roaster here who has a very similar EA decaf as a roaster near you. I shouldn't tell you to buy from the New York roaster if you've got
Sure.
Presta or somebody
Yep.
near you. And then we can even talk across countries. Like there's all these really good green coffees out there. So look for localish roasters. If you know the specific specialty roaster near you that that you've enjoyed their coffees before, you want to try their decaf, ask them what kind of decaf process they have. See what sort it is. And
Yep.
I will say also, there's a lot of people who are still using water processed decaf. It's not that it is bad. It's not even that it's like fallen out of favor. It's just that ethyl acetate came around and people were like, oh, actually, I really like this flavor profile, so that's what I'm going to use. It's almost like, if somebody prefers Ethiopian coffee versus
Yep.
Colombian coffee, like everybody has their taste preferences. Everybody likes what they like, and there's options. So if you find that you have some ethyl acetate decaf and you don't like it, it could be the process, it could be the roasting, it could
Yep.
be the green or the origin, but you can try it and see what you think. For me, if I see ethyl acetate decaf, I kind of know what to expect in terms of flavor profile. I do know that it's going to have more acidity usually,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it does still have that graininess that I was talking about, the cereal flavors. So water processed decaf to me often tastes maybe a little muted, a little dull, but it
Yep.
doesn't
Yep.
have that cereal quality. Or even soy sauce, sometimes people will say about ethyl
Sure.
acetate. It has like a savoriness that can show
Mhm.
up. So, you know, there's all these things that like there's 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 some positive attributes, there's some negative attributes to any way that you process decaf, and you might like you might like one better than another, is what I'll say. So yeah, I mean, I again, your question was what would I recommend? I like ethyl acetate in general. That's what I would recommend. I would say, um, to me, that has given me pleasant decaf experiences, and I appreciate that when I find it.
Okay. Okay. So what Steve is saying is, don't it's not the roasters. Just make sure look for that processing. Okay.
Yeah,
For
and if
decaf
it's not
processing.
labeled, you can usually
Yep.
ask a roaster, and they should know.
Yep. But but specialty coffee, i- it's not cheap. Okay. Let's. I'm gonna set the bar there. If you're used to like grocery store coffee pricing, it's not gonna be the same. Obviously, you have to what you pay for is what you get. So if you're planning on spending 10, 15 bucks on beautiful decaf, it's gonna be hard to get it. Okay, so it's willing to spend some money. We are talking about $25 to $30 range, maybe like 10 ounce, you know. But again, definitely worth trying.
I think
If you,
so.
so, I mean, for the brand new to the coffee as hobbyist, I mean, what do you recommend for try it out for comes to coffee wise, right? So we know regular Colombia, and then so what is the opposite to Colombia comes to tasting profile?
That's a tough question. I mean, the so Colombia is, you call it like a new world coffee
Mhm.
grower. Coffee is not native to Colombia. Every coffee grown in Colombia was introduced. Um, so Colombia is interesting because they do grow a lot of things. They grow a
Mhm.
lot of varieties. They grow it in a few different regions that have, different kind of weather patterns, sort of. Colombia is a relatively big country. Um, if you were to go to Indonesia, for example,
Okay.
Indonesia is uh, an island nation. There's
Yep.
many different islands of different elevations. It is sort of tropical Pacific, and like yeah, that's going to give you a very different flavor profile.
Okay.
Not only because of the growing conditions, but also because of the varieties that are grown there.
Okay.
Indonesia has also introduced has introduced coffee species and varieties. So yeah, like you could go that's a pretty big difference, right? That's basically the opposite side of the world, very
Okay.
different growing conditions, different processing styles, and that sort of thing. In many ways, equally good coffee, equally good quality, equally good and enticing, flavor profiles and that sort of thing. So you can find all kinds of things like that. If you're new to coffee, probably one of the most interesting things to do is learn varieties and also just try different growing
Okay.
origins, different nations or even different areas within a nation, um, that grow coffee. So if you're like I said, Colombia grows a lot of different things. If you try a red Bourbon from Huila and then you try um, I don't know, a geisha or something from a different
Yep.
region. Like those are very different coffees, even though they're both Colombian coffees. So you can explore that way. I really like exploring varieties,
Yes.
coffee varieties. That's a fun way to learn a lot about the differences between, or even just the different expressions that coffee can have. So if you have red bourbon is a great example.
Mhm.
Red bourbon can have this like real big jammy sweetness, depending on where it's grown. And then if you compare that to, I don't know, SL28. SL28 is another of my favorite coffee varieties. Very typically grown in Kenya. It's hard to find it elsewhere. It was developed for Kenya, but SL28 as a variety has a very different character to it. It can be a little bit more delicate, a little bit more herbal, but also more like a tart berry kind of thing. And yeah, like you can just get these different flavor profiles just by exploring different varieties. You can find different varieties within a country, or the same variety between different countries, or just kind of mix and match. You know, it could be different country, different variety as well. But you can explore coffee that way and learn a lot about it.
Sounds good, Steve. Again, we've been talking for almost an hour now. If you're joining us for the first time, I mean, I'd like to have some guests on, at least once a week or so, So this is trying to have, new perspective on coffee and coffee equipment, what's coming, instead of you listening to me all the time. So we are planning on having some new guests every week. Again, we are talking to Steve from Acaia, nice enough to join us this morning.
Always
And
good
make
to
sure
hear.
go back to earlier chat, okay? Make sure go watch it. And make sure check out the Acaia website as well. Hey, thank you, Steve, for so much for joining us this morning.
Anytime, Hoon.
All right.
Thank you.
Here's Steve. And again, I'm going to see you guys next time, folks.
Bye, all.